There's a reason we attach ourselves to certain characters, why some quotes live in our heads for years, why one movie, book, show, or even one TikTok trend can irreparably alter the way we see ourselves. And that's because we don't just consume media, we absorb it. Welcome back to the Mind Matrix. I'm Mira Parik, and today we're zooming out from the environments that shaped us early on and scrolling forward. Because identity isn't just built in homes and classrooms, it's built on screens, in storylines, in comment sections, in the algorithm that quietly decides what we see and what we don't. From childhood cartoons to teenage fandoms to curated Instagram feeds, media offers us a model of who we could, who we should be, what's attractive, what's successful, what's normal. And the more we're exposed to these messages, the more they start to feel natural, inevitable. Repetition matters, representation matters, and so does comparison. Social media especially changes the game. Unlike books or films where we simply observe characters, platforms invite us onto the stage to perform alongside them, to present a version of ourselves we've curated by hand, to measure that version against other people's. Validation becomes quantifiable, likes, reposts, comments, and that very feedback can start influencing the choices we make, the aesthetics we adopt, and even the opinions we express. And the thing is, most of this influence isn't dramatic. It's subtle. It's the beauty standard that slowly shifts your self-perception, the productivity culture that makes the rest feel like failure, the lifestyle content that reframes enough into not quite. At the same time, media can expand us. Diverse storytelling can give people language for experiences they've never seen reflected before. Complex narratives can challenge assumptions. Communities formed online can create a sense of belonging that doesn't quite exist offline. So, is media a mirror reflecting who we already are? Or is it a vessel of misinformation, quietly molding us? To unpack all of this, I sat down with a guest to talk about how media shapes identity, from the stories that stick with us for years, to the impact of constant comparison, to what healthy media consumption actually looks like in a world designed to keep our attention. Let's get into it. Hi, joining me now is Aditi. Thank you so much for being here. To begin, could you introduce yourself to our listeners and share a bit about your background and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aditi. I work in mortgages and real estate space with a top performing REMAX team. Um, we help clients with buying, selling, and financing. And in my free time, I also really enjoy creating poetry and exploring creating my personal brand through identity, business, and just being a young woman in the finance space.
That's great. It's almost a perfect segue into my question for you. How would you define identity?
So, to me, identity is the story that we tell ourselves. It's made up of values and beliefs that we have not only internalized, but we're told to us as we grow up from the people around us, and it's just something that we view ourselves as when we close our eyes.
That's a really poetic answer. I can definitely see the poet in you. As someone who's interested in the literary world, how much, if any, of an influence do you think the media we consume has on our identities? And if so, do you think people are aware of how much media actually influences how we see ourselves?
I think media has a huge impact on identity and just the way that young people see themselves in general. From from 4 to 5 years old, as soon as children start kindergarten, we're put onto cartoons and TV, not just in school but outside of school every day. And slowly but surely, all of those concepts and ideas start to get integrated into our lives, the way we view ourselves and the way that different people view us. It just creates expectations for us and all of the people around us that are invisible bonds, strung through society and we don't even notice them.
That's, that's an interesting point you pose about media affecting us from our childhood. I think that's a great segue into my next question for you. How exactly do you think the media we consume subtly tells us who we should be or want to be? And what kind of messages do you think show up most often in the media we consume?
I don't think media tells us anything subtly. I think it's like loud and very loud and clear, especially in the modern day where young kids and teenagers are already on social media, Instagram, TikTok. It's very much portrays unrealistic beauty standards and even standards about like emotional maturity and dating. I feel are very much projected on social media, and it really influences how small kids are brought up, what they're thinking about, and everything because of the algorithm, whatever platform anyone's on, anything that someone's interested in is always amplified to an extreme because the algorithm caters to your taste. And let's say someone's interested in like fashion,
Yeah.
all of their feed will be fashion every day, 24/7. And then it just leads people to extremes. That's what I found in my experience in dealing with like teenagers and kids, anyways.
Agreed. Once you like click on something for even a millisecond, suddenly your feed is flooded with that. But it's not
Mhm.
just social media, I think, affects identity. It's also types of media like books or movies. So why do you think certain stories or characters stick with people for years? Any personal experience?
Oh, yeah. In terms of characters that you remember for a really long time, I think it's not always the characters that, we were talking about are at the very extremes of society. Sometimes it's the characters that put into emotions, things that we couldn't say for ourselves. They will act out impulses or thoughts that we didn't have the courage to do ourselves. And I think it's the characters that give us permission to be different that we really remember.
That's so true. Sometimes you find escapism in the media that you consume, and those characters bring you to discover a part of your identity you may not have been able to in your own time. Is there any specific media that might have influenced who you are today?
So, funny story, I'm actually the kind of person that doesn't reread or rewatch any stories. So, there is only one movie that I have rewatched ever till date, and it's a Bollywood movie called Three Idiots. Every time, I'm going through a really tough period in school, I have exams coming up, or kind of just a stressful period in life, I find myself going back to that. And it's such a comfort movie, not only because, it's a little motivational. The plot of the story is how the three main characters are going through engineering school and then going from like really struggling backgrounds, different factors like poverty. Someone comes from different classes, societal classes, to like graduating with really high marks and just working through all of those issues. It also reminds me that it's okay to be like different and it's okay to actually want to achieve your goals. Like it's okay to want to be good because the main character um in the story in the movie, he's actually such a high performance individual. Like everything he does, every small thing, he'll think so outside of the box. He'll be so creative with his solutions. And honestly, in everyday life, like you forget how curiosity and how that type of ingenuity can be valuable because people like honestly media since we're talking about it gives you like this oh low effort nonchalant is the new cool
Yeah.
and just you wanting to actually do well in something you're like quote unquote a try hard.
Oh, 100%. That movie has a lot of great messages that students these days really need to take to heart, especially about how hard work always pays off in the end and like the power of a healthy relationship and healthy friendships in one's life. Veering back to social
Agreed.
media, how do you think social media impacts one's identity compared to books, movies, or TV?
It definitely has a huge impact. Like leaning into what we talked about earlier, kids, especially social media, kids are on it a lot younger these days.
Yeah.
So you really start programming your brain in a different way, right? Social media, we know, has been engineered kind of like casinos to give us dopamine hits.
Yeah.
And since attention is so valuable in the world of capitalism, it has been catered and is every day with like new technological advancements to keep us on it as long as possible. And when you're doom scrolling, you're just going past the most entertaining things. Um, your algorithms being catered to not only your whims, but honestly, advertisers, because the biggest paying advertisers are the ones that want to get onto your screen the most. They're the ones that are promoted by the social media platforms to be in front of our children's, our teenagers, like our society's social media feeds. And that gets amplified. So combine that with like all of the dopamine hits, our cortisol levels are like through the roof, and it creates that sense of ADHD in a lot of people. Like attention span gets so small that they have a hard time like actually making it to the end to any of their goals. Like to even sit down and think about your goals is something that a lot of my friends these days, they're like, oh, I scroll for fun. Like in my free time, they're not relaxing or like tuning out, meditating, um, like digital detox, and they're just always online. And when you're always online, the next new thing is always in front of your screen.
100%. People have stopped trying to find the joy in the little things because that rush of dopamine from your screen is almost always more appealing. But it's not just,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, that instant dopamine that's a problem in social media. It's also the constant comparison. As someone who's experienced this themselves, what impact do you see constant comparison having on self-esteem and self-concept, especially in this like digital age?
Oh, 100%. Confidence is honestly a little laughable as a word these days because everyone's self-esteem is usually at an all-time low. You're always online. You're always seeing the perfect image of what a woman or a man should look like.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with AI and like really nice editing, because creators are online so much, they have full-fledged teams that can sit there for hours and, edit to these unrealistic fantasy proportions that humans should aim for.
Yeah.
You're all of my friends, I just noticed the huge difference in the last I'd say half a decade in how we talk about our bodies, and just it not just our bodies, but it then impacts to like every facet of their life. Because if you can't be confident in the one thing that you're gonna have for the next 80 years that you have to live with, they don't feel confident in any of the actions that they could achieve in life. It's honestly like the potential of their gifts and skills is overshadowed because they don't feel confident in who they are, or just like existing and walking in themselves, just
Yeah.
being there.
We're almost moving backwards as a society again, moving back to those standards and stereotypes, but now instead it's the beauty standards and like the perfect vision of what we should be like. And we were talking about the algorithm earlier and how that like shapes much of our experience online. But how much control do you think people actually have over what shapes them online?
I'd say very little. Most people. Now, if someone, takes the time, um, it's a little bit of a paradox because at as much as we like to blame the algorithm, like, oh, it will always cater to the pockets of the big companies and corporations that want to sell us stuff. We are in the kind of time where, mass uploads of data are being made every single second, and anything that anyone could ever want to look up is probably out there online. Like, you want to start a business, it's on Google. You can YouTube it. Someone's done drop shipping, e-commerce before. You want to be a nail artist, you can find the suppliers and you can find your clients all online. It's very much like a paradox. And unless you're using that control that you have, at the end of the day, we are the ones that move our fingers to scroll for the next reel, but you also can use those fingers to search up something that would actually be useful and productive to your life as well.
Yeah,
It's just depends on like the individual, I'd say.
yeah, you have to take the control back into your own hands. So, what worries you most about how the current generation interacts with media today?
What worries me most is how easily we give up our control. I know we just talked about how easy it is to actually be in control, but it's something that most people, like most of our peers, I think, give up knowingly or unknowingly because, you get something out of being on social media. You get to buy your next outfit, you get to um, buy that dress you were always looking at. But I think if you're always just online, we forget how different social media reality is portrayed to be versus how actual reality is.
Yeah.
For example, I'm in the real estate space, right? So with our team, um, when you see other realtors online or other investors online, like anything real estate related, honestly, is very big, glamorous, millions of dollars, investment properties, luxury cars. And the reality of real estate is very, very different. When you're working with investors, there's so many things that come up. A lot of realtors that I know don't always have luxury cars. Like a lot of people are in the beginning of their journeys. Um, and the houses aren't always big. Sometimes we're helping renters move into their very first like home or actual property that they're gonna own. So it's just a starter home. It's
Yeah.
not that big fancy couch and um like floor to ceiling cabinets.
Yeah. The media seems to be putting a lot of unrealistic expectations on us these days. And it's like that distinction between real life and like real as in like REEL. And I think that's like a funny sort of way to phrase it that I saw the other day floating around. Especially what you said, the real estate space. The housing market is very different from what people might expect. The prices, especially and like your first house, it may not be the 6 bedroom hall kitchen mansion you've been looking at on TikTok.
Mhm. Yeah.
But on the topic of types of media and their effect on us, are there any different types of media you think are more likely to promote healthy identity development? So that could be like a book or a movie or even like online on the internet.
Honestly, I think everyone should sincerely, do a little digital detox and get on newspapers and books. Like
100%.
no social media whatsoever. It can be fiction books, it can be the like opinion column in the newspaper that's, half gossip. That's okay. Just like getting back to the act of holding our physical like what you're reading, just holding the physical product there. And then I think honestly, not getting from that mode of just consumption, you're just always taking in media
Yeah.
to going to creating media, like writing your own newspaper article, writing a little blog, writing in your journal will create such a difference in all of the cons that come with overconsumption of social media.
Yeah. As someone who writes poetry as well, like you mentioned earlier, I find it's a great outlet to express my emotions. What are your views on that? How do you think like having a healthy outlet to express yourself can help with your identity?
I would say that everyone needs one. I don't know how I went so many years without it. So this is something that I started recently. I'd say, poetry and journaling within the last couple years. It has made such a huge difference in my life. I went from being like a stressed out, always working, always moving, probably really low self-esteem, as we're talking about, like, starting out with Instagram and TikTok, to someone who has had the chance to work through those emotions. Because once you like disconnect from social media, you realize, oh, all of these feelings that I'm having, if you just take a second to actually dissect what you're feeling, um, you can backdate that and you can like unravel that and figure out, oh, this actually stems from this issue. And that's really like, that's an easy fix. I'm having low self-esteem because I haven't been outside in like 3 days. I haven't gotten any sunshine. Did
Yeah.
I drink my water? Like, there's some really easy fixes. Um, and we just forget because you're always taking in the next new trend.
Yeah. People joke about touching grass, but that is something we should consider. Go outside more. But I like that
Yes.
thing about stepping back and taking a look at the bigger picture. Like, especially with media consumption, over the past few years, I've struggled with idealizing my own life and thinking, well, if people are like living such romantic, like amazing lives, like why am I not enjoying it? So then I took a step back and I started journaling. I write down like one good thing that happened every single day. And looking back on that and flipping through the pages makes me realize that there's so much more to life than what we see online, and there are so many like little joys. And I think that's a really important thing for people to consider doing.
Yes, yes. I love that you've been gratitude journaling. There have been so many studies that show how our brains and minds function differently just from being a little more grateful in our everyday lives.
Yeah. A one like pro to media that like talking about gratitude is the amount of representation that we've been seeing in recent years. And I think that really helps with like healthy identity development, like seeing yourself in the media you consume. So how do you think
Mhm.
storytelling, especially like diverse stories, expand how people see themselves and other people?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's something that I'm actually really, really proud of and excited to have, like, diversity in media. So growing up as a brown Indian girl, there was essentially no other characters, female or otherwise, that were represented in like movies or TV shows. And just to have that in recent years, it makes you feel seen. It makes you feel validated. And in terms of how, it expands other people's, how did you say it?
Oh, how it like helped others understand themselves and other people.
Okay, so it expands other people's perspectives too, because you kind of realize how different everyone's struggles are. And it really gets you out of that, like, oh, I'm the only one dealing with this, and my problems are the biggest in the world. Because once you see it from, let's say, an immigrant's perspective, once you see it from a struggling single Black mother who has like all of the odds against her, you realize, oh, if someone who has every odd stacked against them, and this is how they deal with their problems, they can have a positive attitude and still go on to achieve so many things. Like, my problems are nothing. I just need to be a little more creative, and actually, I can do it too.
Yeah, it's definitely all about perspective. Even when we look at things like the
Mhm.
media, often when we're talking about its effects on us, we tend to villainize it. And when we talk about representation, it's not just representation of other people, but representation of other ways of going about things. And we should
Mhm.
really bring light to how media consumption can be healthy. Like, what do you think healthy media consumption actually looks like? We talked about digital detoxes and anything, but are there any other tips or anything you have to share?
Um, I think healthy media consumption for me would be just having a set time that you're online, making sure that you're not always consuming overly negative things.
Yeah.
And part of that comes from, on the side, sitting down with just your thoughts and yourself, figuring out what your path is in life, where you're trying to go. It doesn't have to be like super grand, like your life purpose, but just where you want to be in the next couple months, next year, and using media and other people's perspectives to fuel you and guide you in that direction instead of always just going to the entertainment side of things, like doom scrolling for the fun of it.
Yeah, 100%. That's a really good insight. Actually, this is a perfect note to end our conversation off on. But if for one final message to our listeners, if you could change one thing about how we engage with the media, what would you suggest?
Hmm. If I could change only one thing about how we engage with the media, it would probably be the negative hate comments that a lot of people leave.
Yeah.
So just commenting in general, I think that's one of the biggest things I'd want to change. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say it.
100%. I agree wholeheartedly. Physical wounds can heal, but we don't realize oftentimes how much our words have an impact on people. Thank you so much for your insight. We definitely learned a lot about identity and its connection to the media today. This was amazing, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, you too.
And that was my conversation with Aditi. It gave me a lot to think about, especially her point on regaining control. Because the algorithm isn't evil. Stories aren't inherently manipulative. Comparison isn't a new thing. What's new is the scale, the speed, the fact that we're swimming in narratives 24/7, and most of the time we don't even realize we're absorbing them. And that's the tension of it all, right? Media can be a mirror. It can reflect us back to ourselves in ways that feel validating and expansive. But the media can also be a mold. It can hand us standards we never consciously agreed to. It can convince us that success looks one way, that beauty fits one template, that productivity equals worth. And if we're not careful, we start shaping ourselves around those frames instead of asking whether they were even meant for us at all. So maybe the real question isn't, is media good or bad? Maybe it's, are we choosing from it, or is it choosing for us? Healthy media consumption doesn't mean deleting every app or rejecting every trend. It means awareness. It means noticing how something makes you feel after you scroll. Because as we've discovered before, identity is not just something we inherit, and it's not something we passively absorb. It's something we participate in. We can question the narrative. We can diversify what we consume. We can follow the voices that challenge us instead of only the ones that mirror our insecurities. We can step back when the comparison gets too loud. We can remember that curated feeds are not the full reality. And maybe most importantly, we can remember that we are more complex than any single storyline. So as you click off this episode, I just want you to carry that with you. Pay attention to what sticks. Notice what shifts you. Be intentional about what you let shape you, because the stories you consume will influence who you become. The only question is whether you're letting them write your story or whether you're the one holding the pen. I'll see you in the next episode of The Mind Matrix. This is your host, Mira Parik, signing off.